This is not the end of a journey. This is the beginning of an inspiring new chapter.
今年10月底，吉隆坡举行的亚细安峰会上，精彩画面一个接一个。其中最出圈的新面孔，非东帝汶总理古斯芒莫属。他在会场发糖，被马来西亚首相安华当场调侃。他也在东帝汶正式加入亚细安的演讲上眼含泪光，台上台下无不动容。有人说他像个老顽童，也有人笑他太感性。大家也许看不到，这位七旬老人的泪水里藏着他为国奋斗的一生。他见证了东帝汶这个亚洲最年轻的国家，从战火纷飞到独立建国，再坐上亚细安圆桌，这几十年来的伤痕和梦想。
It is time to officially place the Timor-Leste flag onto the stage, joining the other flags of ASEAN member states.
1946年，古斯芒在东帝汶北部的一座小城出生。那一年，帝汶岛刚刚摆脱日本占领，东边重新落入葡萄牙殖民者之手，西边则面对荷兰人试图重夺控制权，正被卷入印度尼西亚独立的浪潮。相比西边，普属帝汶显得相对平静。古斯芒在教会学校读书，还曾在殖民地军队服役，后来一步步走上了谋求民族独立的道路。1974年，葡萄牙爆发康乃馨革命，推翻了强人萨拉扎建立的独裁体制。新政府推行去殖民化政策，葡萄牙的海外领地纷纷迈向独立。至于遥远的普属帝汶，到底该走上独立自主的道路，还是并入邻近的大国印尼？不同派别的争斗就此拉开序幕。1975年11月28号，独立派东帝汶独立革命阵线取得胜利，单方面宣布东帝汶独立。谁都没料到，仅仅9天之后，印尼总统苏哈多突然下令发动入侵，坦克越过边境，战火再次吞噬这片土地。就在这时，古斯芒加入东格镇，跟随游击队转战山林，抵抗印尼的统治。在组织经历无数牺牲的过程中，他逐渐成为领袖，开始接受国际媒体采访，名气大增。1992年，古斯芒被印尼军警逮捕，判处终身监禁。就算身陷囹圄，他依然继续指挥抵抗运动，被人称为亚洲的曼德拉。经过印尼统治20多年后，东帝汶的局势终于迎来转机。1998年，苏哈多政权在国内暴动中垮台，印尼进入民主时代。1年后，古斯芒重获自由，东帝汶也在联合国的支持下举行独立公投，接近80%民众反对继续留在印尼。这个结果激怒了亲印尼、反独立的激进分子，全国爆发大骚乱，造成1000余人死亡。直到国际维和部队介入，局势才得以平息。那年年底，53岁的古斯芒从印尼回国，呼吁各方合作建国。2002年5月，东帝汶终于正式独立。古斯芒当选首任总统，成为名副其实的东帝汶国父。
To the community of nations that we are now one of them.
独立之路来之不易，当年的葡萄牙殖民者本就没留下什么家底，加上经过20多年的血腥占领，古斯芒那年代领袖接手的是一片千疮百孔的土地。
Even if you go to Timor today in 2025, you will see the scars. So it wasn't just that the people were colonized, the country was invaded by a military force. There was a lot of looting and burning. There was destruction of buildings, even 20 plus years on.
建国初期，东帝汶派系冲突暴乱频发，古斯芒也曾遭遇枪击。这样的条件下，经济发展和国家建设困难重重。
The immediate challenge still today is infrastructure, right? That's very little in terms of good roads, bridges, and I'm talking not just about Dili, the capital, which is the most developed part of Timor, but out of the main capital area and the suburbs, there's very little even running water, electricity, there's no Wi-Fi. There are very few playgrounds for the children. There's very little good public transport. There is very challenging areas to develop, including policing, how to make sure people feel safe walking around at night, especially women and children. They do have very high rates of domestic violence.
没有像样的基础设施，哪怕坐拥石油和天然气资源，还有100多万年轻人口，东帝汶都很难只靠自己的力量发展国家。积极融入区域和国际组织，就成了至关重要的道路。东帝汶2011年申请加入亚细安，却因行政能力和发展水平有限，没有得到批准。直到2022年底，亚细安终于原则上同意东帝汶加入，并且在2025年10月正式签署协议。经过14年努力，终于成为亚细安成员国的东帝汶，未来会获得怎样的机会？
Timor now gets access to ASEAN. What does access mean? Some of the details still have to be worked out, but almost immediately, I expect tourism from ASEAN to Timor should increase once the visa-free exemptions start for all the ASEAN nationals, just like how we go to Bangkok, go to KL. I think there are a lot of young Timorese who want to work and study in various ASEAN countries. And I hope many ASEAN young people start to visit Timor. Not just young people, old people also can go.
For the people of Timor-Leste, this is not only a dream realized, but a powerful affirmation of our journey. This is not the end of a journey. This is the beginning of an inspiring new chapter.